Okay, what's up, guys? Wanted to come on here today. I have a very special guest who means an awful lot to me. This is the ever so talented, ever so beautiful, intelligent, amazing Mrs. Mary Tacker. Um, Guys, the reason I wanted to bring my wife on and kind of do a part two to my introduction is my wife has been a huge part of my success. Um, she's a lot of the driving force behind what keeps me going. She is the kick in the ass that I need pretty regularly. And she's been, I don't know, she's helped with my recovery and with my um, progress outside of prison since I've met her. So for those of you that don't know, Mary and I have been together 8 years at this point. So I met her about 2 years after I came home from prison. And we dated for a while, then we ended up moving in together. I've got a story about that I talked about with Nick in Nick's episode, but we can get back into that. I have a few questions I want to talk to her about, but overarchingly, I just wanted to kind of have her ask some of the in-depth questions that we didn't really get to in episode 1, and I will let her take it away.
Take it away now.
I sent you the questions.
Oh, okay. You're not going to ask me?
So actually, okay, so pull them up, but I will
Okay.
ask. So, I mean, just to kind of touch base and give everybody an idea of who Mary Tackett is, kind of tell everybody what your childhood was like growing up, just briefly, and kind of what kind of morals were instilled in you, so on and so forth.
So the first thing is I'm adopted. My biological mother and father got pregnant with me when they were in college, and they knew that they weren't going to be great parents in their early 20s, and they put me up for adoption. And I was born on December 12th of 85, and I went home with my parents December 15th of 85. So, and I'd always known I was adopted. They never kept it from me. My parents tried for a really long time to have kids and they couldn't. And it was always prefaced to me that it's not that my biological parents didn't want me, it's that they loved me so much that they gave me a better life. And from a very young age, blood didn't mean anything to me. Like, my parents were wonderful parents. They were very strict, and they had their own downfalls, but they raised me to be super independent, super strong. And I think all good women come from one place, and that is with a serious case of daddy issues.
So it's funny you said that, because I was actually going to briefly ask you what would make, so for those of you that don't know, my wife she has started on her master's degree. She has a college education. She was in theater growing up and in the
was a ballerina.
Ballerina dance.
I was a ballerina.
And so has a very strong foundation of activities and being involved in different things growing up. She was always active, always got great grades, never been in trouble with the criminal justice system.
I'm a shitty driver, but that's it.
Yeah. And also never, she just, like I said in the episode with Nick, she checks all the boxes on paper.
But not when we met.
Yeah.
But not when we met.
So yeah, I mean, Mary was going through a divorce, but if you tally up my red check marks versus hers,
flags,
red flags. Yeah.
You were a carnival.
I was a carnival. I see red flags and I think carnival. But yeah, so I wanted to ask you real quick. I mean, what would lead you to? So Mary knew about my whole criminal record before we went on our first date. We had met on Tinder. We had talked back and forth for a couple days. She used to do background checks for a living, so immediately she hopped online, did a quick search, and found the world's friendliest felon. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you, what led you, aside from the daddy issues, to?
Well, the daddy issues, I think, are at the root of it. So my father was the greatest man I could have ever had as a father. He was protective. He used to jokingly say, "I'll go to jail for you and I'll enjoy it." Like, my dad
That's
was
all.
my
That's all good fathers do.
my dad was great. My dad, he took me to every dance class. My mom didn't like to drive at night. My dad took me to every dance class. He took me to every party. He never had me fill up my own gas tank. But my father was a wildly functional alcoholic. And he drank pretty heavily from the time I was 5 until he got sober when I was 22. And I always knew that he was sick. He wasn't a violent man. He just was sad. He was sad. He had a very hard childhood and he drank to cope. And while I had a very hard time respecting him when he was in the throes of alcoholism, I knew that he was a good man who had demons. And he got sober when I was 22 because he was going to die. He had cirrhosis of the liver and he was going to die. And he got sober and that was it. Like, he went to rehab and he never drank again. And that's unheard of. But to me, that was my reality and my experience with somebody who had addiction issues. So fast forward about 10 years, and I had gone through a very ugly divorce where the true colors of a lot of people that I loved shone through. I left with nothing but my clothes on my bed, and my husband was not a bad man. I just knew it wasn't the marriage I should be in. And I left with nothing. I left him the house. We had split custody of my son, and my parents didn't believe in divorce. And I slept on a couch for a year with me and my son. We had a 4-bedroom house my parents had, and I was not given a room. And so when I met you, I was in a very dark place. And I had always been a good kid and done good things and done exactly what you were supposed to do. And I met you at the very bottom of where I felt I should ever be. I remember my apartment had carpet in the kitchen, and I was like, that's so gross. And it wasn't that I didn't feel worthy, but you were starting over and I was starting over, and I did look you up, and I knew from talking to you just on Tinder, and when we started texting and when you called me, I knew before I met you. I knew you were so witty and you were so funny and we just clicked.
Oh, I'm gonna cry.
And I looked you up and I found you because on Tinder, like, you don't know last names, right? So I knew you grew up in Ritztown and I knew you played alumni football. And from those 2 pieces of information, I found everything. I knew how much your mom paid in taxes on her house that year. I knew you had 2 beautiful children. I knew that you and your ex had been divorced since 2009. And while I found your criminal record, and it was lengthy and it was kind of scary, I also saw that in the 2 years you had come home, you had rebuilt a relationship with your family, that you had custody of your kids, that you had a full-time job. And I remember asking you what kind of car you drove, because I think what somebody drives says a lot about them. And I had absolutely been burned in the past. Like, oh, what kind of car do you drive? And they're like, I don't have a license. We weren't doing that again. So when you told me you had a red Charger, I was like, okay, all right, okay.
So, guys, I also want to focus on I want to sidebar this for 1 second. So, obviously, since day one that I came home, and it was before day one, it was when I got locked up, I had gotten into the mindset that I was making a change. I was going to be better. I was going to be the best that I could. I was going to be the best at whatever I did. I was coming home and I was going to be a fucking monster. I reestablished relationships, got custody of my kids. You guys, none of that shit's easy. I know a lot of you will sit back and be like, oh, well, you had support, you had this, you had that. You know, it was easy for you. No, the fuck it wasn't. It's never easy. But as I've said in multiple other episodes, you know, as soon as you catch that felony, you are labeled a second-class citizen. It doesn't matter if it's loans, home, renter applications, jobs. um, you're immediately looked down upon. And so I just wanted to ask her because it was it always kind of throws me for a loop why somebody that was, and she says that she was kind of on she had hit rock bottom as well. And we were kind of both in the same place, but I've always kind of held her at a higher standard than myself because, like Nick and I talked about in episode 3, that's you guys, you kind of just get into that mindset. You guys have to understand there's strength in the struggle. Once you get through it, there's lessons in that, and you build from those. You learn from them, you build from them. Nobody's ever going to tell you, you're not going to get told yes every time. But as long as you continue to work, you could potentially have a beautiful woman come into your life. And she's going to look past all that. You could have an employer that's going to turn around and say, you know, I can see back through all these steps that you've taken, and, you know, I'm going to give you a chance. Or a renter application, things like that. You guys have to understand that just because you're falling on your face and getting kicked in the teeth on a regular basis, that's still progress. Okay, so going back to,
and I want to state, well, I mean, we've been together 8 years, and probably for a good 6 of those 8, you didn't understand why I wanted it, and it was actually a huge hurdle in our relationship. Because I saw the potential in it.
Right.
I saw, and like I said, to bring it back, I loved my father through the good, the bad, and the ugly. I never thought he wasn't worthy of love or worthy of good things. He just had made mistakes. And meeting you was, I've said from the beginning, I believe God made me for you. The adoption thing, being able to love children that aren't blood. I mean, I knew you had 2 kids. Actually, I wouldn't have dated you if you not had kids, because I had a son. And I didn't want somebody who felt that they needed to come before my child. My child is always number 1. Now, we have grown family from that. But I wanted you to understand that when you have children, your children should come first. And you had those values, you had those morals, and that was very attractive to me. But you didn't believe that I really wanted you. It was hard to get over.
Yeah, I didn't, and it all falls back into that. Once you're incarcerated, once you're given that felony, you're just in that mindset because society tells you on a regular basis that you're not worthy, that you're, and it doesn't matter if you go and serve your time, so on and so forth. It's just
you still did something to get there.
Yeah,
you made the felony. I don't think was all the things that led to the felony. You know,
right?
You had made mistakes and hurt, not physically, but you had hurt people.
Yeah.
And you didn't understand why somebody like me would want someone who had done those things.
Right.
But I knew that you were so much better than that.
So, okay, so moving forward, and I want to go back. I sent Mary some pre-show questions that she didn't really obviously look over. Which
getting ready for a wedding.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, just so you guys know, we're dressed up. We're on our way to my best friend's wedding this afternoon. But no, so like I said, I wanted you guys to gain some intro on Mary, and I will say, I said it in the beginning, you know, having a great woman in your life is detrimental, but you don't need a great woman in your life. I mean, it's
detrimental?
Not detrimental. It's a great having a great woman in your life is a huge bonus. Obviously, I'm going to tell you time and time again, don't get tied up with women that are sucking you dry and
listen, the Bible says you are supposed to be evenly yoked.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do good things in your life and you bring home a trash box, whether you're male and female, male, whatever, you have to be evenly yoked. If you want to go far in life and build something, you have to have somebody who's ready to build with you.
And yeah, that's a huge factor. You have to find somebody that has goals, that's willing to set goals or meet you with your goals. And it's and I think that's where her and I mesh so well. She's the loud one, she's the angry one. I'm the very nice big cuddly bear.
You're big tiny baby.
But you know, we have goals, and we've set goals, and we've worked for them, and we've established them, and we still have goals. So that's a huge factor. Outside of that, like I said, the purpose of this was kind of get into a little more in depth. I already planned on having the beautiful, lovely Miss Mary Tackett on for her own show, so we could talk about kind of our issues that have sprung from my felonies and so on and so forth at a later episode. But we're still building the foundation here. So I'm going to let Mary ask a few questions and we'll go from there. You're so cute because I literally just gave you like 5 minutes.
So you want me to ask me? Okay. So this is the intro. Okay, so you named this the jungle. I wasn't sold. But why? I know this story. But why is it called the jungle?
So I mean, obviously, initially going into Lake Erie, I'm gonna roll it back a little because I'm a huge advocate against for-profit prisons. I saw firsthand what happens in for-profit prisons where privatized companies can come in and purchase prisons. Lake Erie Correctional Institution and CCA of America was the first private company that was allowed by the federal government and state government to come in and purchase a state facility. Now, federal facilities are already generally run by private companies. It's been done like that for years, but the government has a good grasp on it and they still follow federal guidelines and procedures. State facilities are different. And, CCA came in and again, episode 3 with Nick, we talked about it. He was down there with me. It was almost and I used the quote from Eminem's song in that interview, the lunatics run the asylum. And it was nonstop duffel bags. So to give you guys an idea, generally in a state-run facility, State Highway Patrol will patrol the outer walls of the wall or of the prison. Well, when CCA took over Lake Erie, that then fell on the local sheriff's department who had budget cuts in the previous years. So they didn't have the manpower to monitor the walls. So at that point, you had cell phones, you had weapons, you had drugs, tobacco, anything you could think of was being thrown in duffel bags over those walls. And it was literally just it was a free for all. There was massive levels of extortion, violence, fights.
Here's fun.
Oh, so, 2011 is when CCA took over. I was down there by July of 2011. And it was just a free for all. So there was a housing unit. It was an intro housing unit. When you go into the prison facility, you go through intake. And then once you are classed to your dorm, if you're a new offender or if you are a repeat offender that has a violent background, you are classed to Huron CD, which at the time Huron CD was the jungle. I think it has changed a few times because they ended up making that. It doesn't matter. Huron CD for a level 2 facility was one of the wildest. It was just nuts, some of the stuff that I saw in there. So that's generally, I know.
And how long were you in the jungle?
I was in there about 6 months.
Okay.
And so
this was your first time in prison. Yeah. Your first time, and you didn't have a violent history.
No.
You were a big white guy. And what's the demographics of that place?
I mean, obviously, it's mixed. It's split across the board.
But there were gangs in there, right?
Yeah, I will tell you a lot of you have some captains and stuff from gangs that would be in here on CD. Generally, those guys shot call from other dorms, like the honor dorm. They get in there and they do their own thing. They just hand out orders. So you have a lot of I'll call them soldiers, in that unit, and they're in there kicking boxes, they're stealing shit. I saw a kid get smacked in the face with a fan motor in a net bag, which for those of you that don't know, that's how you wash your clothes. The state gives you a net bag, you put everything in your net bag, hang it on the end of your rack. Porter comes around and grabs it. It's about this big, white, it's like a big sack.
We still have that net bag, and my 10-year-old just took it to camp.
Recidivism. Anyway, no, so they had gone up to him. Somebody ID'd him from the street, said he was a child molester or a sex offender or something. They asked him for his papers. He wouldn't show papers. Within 10 seconds of him saying he wouldn't show papers, there was some jawing back and forth, and lo and behold, all you see was this fan motor, which was probably about this big around and probably about 5 pounds, come flying up over a net bag, cracked him in his skull.
So let me ask you, because I always thought this was very interesting, because as someone who has no experience with this whatsoever, I was always asking you, hey, what was that guy in for? Like your first roommate, what was he in for? That isn't discussed.
No, I mean, it can be. If somebody's suspicious, I'll tell you, we talked a lot. Some guys are willing to talk about it, but that's not a question you ever really, if you're having a conversation with somebody down there, I would.
But you're not the new guy going, hey, why are you here?
No, fuck no. Again, respect and staying in your own lane is a huge thing for anybody that's, I mean, maybe seeing this and is looking at prison time. You stay the fuck in your own lane. Like you stay in your own lane. If it's at all possible, you stay away from the gangs. I mean, obviously, you might get caught up in some shit. There might be a big brawl on on the street you live in, and all of a sudden you're caught up in it. You're defending yourself.
But let's be honest. Let's not take away the privilege that you had going in there and being 6'6".
No, absolutely. And I attribute a lot of me not having any problems. I mean, I was approached by the ABs. I was approached by different people like, hey, you should link up. We should clear. And I was 100%. Man, I had 2 years. I was doing my 2 years and I was coming the fuck home. And again, I've had one of the guys on Nick. I plan on having another guy on that I was locked up with. My take on it was you find a group of solid. I mean, I'm a white guy, so I'm gonna say it. You find a group of solid honkies, you hang out with them, you work out with them, you get into your routine, and you do your thing.
But you had a friend who you knew from Ravenna who
Yeah.
was African American.
Yeah.
And he looked out for you.
No, he did.
You said he did.
Yeah. No,
and he
James
was in the gang.
James absolutely did. I mean, I had an issue with some of the felons down there, like the heartless felons, and James. I'm not going to talk gang names back and forth. I don't really want to do that, but James was involved, and he had kind of
Told them to leave you alone.
Intervened on a few separate occasions. So, yeah, I mean, but again, it would have been way worse for me, and it's way worse for anybody if you go down there and just start sticking your nose in shit that doesn't involve you. I know plenty of tiny white guys that were in there that never clicked up, never did anything like that. They were perfectly fine. You stay in your own lane, you do your own thing. That's it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the jungle was the scary part of the jail, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the name comes from. And you were only in there for 6 months. How long was your whole bid?
2 years.
But how long were you? Because you went to Neo Cap afterwards, and we'll talk about that later.
So I was in Lake Erie about a total of, I think, 14 to 16 months.
And you did 6 months in the jungle. Then, because you had been good behavior and all that, then you got moved to the honor dorm, where it was a lot more freedom. It was right. It was more freedom, and it just, you didn't have the same level of people in that dorm as the jungle.
Yeah, so in Ontario AB, it takes a while to get in there if you're an inmate. So you have to show good behavior. You can't have tickets. Can't be getting into fights. So I've always been a worker. Even when I was a drug addict, if I didn't have a job, it was because I was recently fired for being a fucking drug addict. But I still would always shortly have a job after. So when I got down to Lake Erie, they started me washing dishes. And I used to get in arguments with guys. To anybody that's ever worked in the dish room knows, they leave about that much room in the window for the tray return, and dudes will bounce their fucking trays full of food back at you. There was a couple times I came out from around the back chasing motherfuckers down and had sergeants and everybody screaming at me, screaming at them. But so I started in the dishwashing room, and I used to bitch nonstop. Well, finally, a woman that worked she ran the kitchen. She was like the second in charge or some shit. She asked me the one night, she goes, hey, you're a big guy. She said, are you physically able to work back in the warehouse? And I had done some shit. I had a bunch of shipping and receiving jobs before that. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. I can work back there. And it's all hand unloading off the truck, putting stuff away in freezers, just putting stuff away, pulling stuff out that they need. So I worked in the warehouse. Well, they don't want somebody that works in the warehouse and has access to sugar to make hooch and fresh meat and fresh vegetables and all that shit to where I could be boosting it and taking it back to the dorms. They don't want those types of people in the Huron CD, the jungle, things like that. So they asked me if I wanted to move to Ontario. So I moved over there.
But And I love that you tell this story because after you came home, you were doing a shipping and receiving job, doing exactly that when I met you.
Yeah.
So what you did in prison absolutely got you a job after you got out, and it was a good paying job.
Yeah.
You worked nights, but it was a good paying job. But I've also heard a story about you smuggling stuff out of the warehouse.
No, so
And tell them how you did it, because that's the best part.
I give a shit. Listen, man, all you know when any of you that have been locked up, you already know. You got to eat. I'm a big boy. I was only getting so much money on my books, and so
you were thick in the thighs.
Yeah, so I supplied a lot of sugar for hooch. Supplied a lot of sugar for hooch. I smuggled a lot of
honey buns,
Kool-Aid, no, fresh meat, vegetables. Guys would give me orders. Guys would give me like grocery lists, and I would grab what I could. Me and Nick used to eat good. We had fresh chicken every night. We had vegetables every night to cook with our ramen noodles, making our breaks and stuff.
A little bit of tape chicken.
Right? I'm not gonna lie. We drank hooch while we were in there. I'd give the sugar to the homeboys, and the homeboys would cook it up.
But how did you smuggle it out? Where was the contraband?
There was a big like 20 pound probably bucket in the back. There was cellophane. We had a whole setup. Somebody would distract the people in the other room. We'd go into the dry warehouse, and there was brown paper bags, and I would fill up a brown paper. I mean, they were about this big. I'd fill up a brown paper bag about half full, wrap it, and then wrap it in cellophane, throw it up between my thighs. I was a lot thicker back then. So
that's why I call it like tape chicken. Yeah. You were sticking it where the brown bag needed to save it.
Yeah, and I'd smuggle that shit back across the yard.
This is how he got me to love him, by telling me these stories.
And I don't really give a fuck. Dude, people got to eat in there. You're in a fucked up situation. You do what you got to do. I mean, people do tattoos in there. People do all kinds of. They draw cards. They do this. They do that. I just got up and went to work every day, and state pays not shit. So I could care less. Lieutenant Ashcroft, if you're seeing this, fuck you. You were Ashcroft he finally, the kitchen lady set me up one day because I knew they were kind of on to me. So the kitchen lady came out, handed me and my buddy a package of Kool-Aid. They were like this big. They were what they throw in the big containers. And I hadn't been taking anything out of there in a while because I knew they were watching me. And I'd been thrown on the wall and searched numerous times coming out of work, coming out of chow, thinking people are passing stuff off to me in line. And the kitchen lady handed me the little bag of Kool-Aid. She was like, here. She was like, I appreciate everything you do. It was super nice. As soon as I walked out that fucking kitchen, Ashcroft threw me on a fucking wall, and I got a ticket for it.
Damn it, Linda.
Almost got kicked out of the honor dorm. I don't give a fuck. But I had like 3 months left. I could have given a fuck less.
So I think this is super important. I'd like to. So you and I have talked about doing this podcast for a while. And this is all your baby. This is all you. I try and leave you alone, but I give my opinions on things. But what is your goal for this show?
So ultimately, my goal is just to inspire, to give hope. And I know that sounds like a real cheesy, corny answer, but I'm very passionate about convicted felons, and I'm very passionate about the recidivism rates. And 1.9 million Americans are locked up on a daily basis in state prisons. So, and out of those 1.9 million Americans, 89% of those guys, once they're released, will be back in jail or prison within 8 years. And so, I felt like 8 years was a good mark for me. Like I made it 8 years. Now I have some backbone that I could talk about it. I've done my thing, and I really just want to. Even if I reach one person and, they can turn their life around and they can make something of their fucking life and make a great life, that's all I'm looking for. I think.
And break the cycle.
And we're going to get into a lot of that down the road. I mean, my cousin Brian did the first episode. Him and I talk a lot on generational curses. But you have to bring all that to light. You have to recognize it in yourself what the issue is. I took for the first 10, 15 years, I took so much away from my community, from doing drugs and fucking my life up, and took so much away from my family. At this point, it's more or less just, I want to give something back. I have I have a great foundation that I built off of, and I have tons of experience. I may not have been locked up 10, 15 years, but once you've been to the joint, you've been to the joint. It is what it is. And that's not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on through all of this, yeah, we're going to talk jail, we're going to talk prison, we're going to talk bullshit that goes on in there. But my main focus on all this is, once you get out, because it doesn't matter if you were in there for murder, attempted murder, assault, burglary, drugs. Once you get out, we're all felons. So my main focus is to just make all of you understand and get you guys to understand, fuck what society says about you, fuck what society thinks about you, because ultimately, and my beautiful wife here is the one that beat this into my head, and I fucking love her for it. And I'm going to say it all the time. Perception is reality. The way you perceive yourself and the way you carry yourself, first of all, the way you perceive yourself is the way you are going to carry yourself, and it's how you're going to think about yourself. If you get into that mindset of, I'm a convicted felon, I'm not worth shit, I'm a piece of shit,
I might as well just go back to doing what I was doing.
I might as well go back to doing what I'm doing.
It's all I know.
Yep.
It's all anybody thinks of me.
Yep.
And I have a goal for this. When I started dating you, so I had dated a felon before you. My ex-husband he never put a toe out of line. He was a past, like he worked in the church. We worked in the church together, and he was a good man.
It's a great fucking dad.
He's a great fucking dad. And I hope that, you said you wanted to do an episode with kids. Flynn talking about the dichotomy of having a father who has never done a darn thing. And then you being his father figure. I'm really excited to hear about that. But I dated a felon before you who had very different charges. Also, all stem from drugs, but he was scary. And I ended up in a situation that I thought that was it. I thought he was going to hurt me. And so I had split up with him, and I met you not shortly after. And my friends, who are of the same demographic of me, worst thing we've ever had is parking ticket. They were upset that they did not understand why I would want to spend time with you. It was, Mary, you're making the same bad choice over again. We don't support this. And one of my very best friends, who I love with all my heart, just could not bring herself. She goes, I'm not being a part of this. And she was nasty to you. And she's admitted she was nasty to you. And it was very much based on, a stereotype. It wasn't you. And she has since become one of your biggest supporters.
Oh, I love you.
And, but society, I think, sometimes gets up their own ass.
Well, and I'm just going to call it what it is. My main focus of this is just to break the stigma, to break the overarching idea that you have to live the rest of your life paying a debt that you technically already paid.
But also, I think me coming into your life, you came from a environment where you were enabled to make bad choices.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you and Brian touched on it in your childhood, but you were never told no.
No, I wasn't.
You were handed cars, you were handed money, you were never told no. And I think other than the prison guards, and that judge that put you there, I was one of the first people that ever told you no. Yeah. That ever told you are to take accountability for what you do. And I've instilled that in you, and I have tried to instill that in our children, because where you came from, you were enabled.
Yeah.
And we've had conversations about this, but boundaries, that's love. Boundaries is love. And
well, we've incorporated that. I mean, now that I understand that, and we've had those discussions and those hardships, that's incorporated with children now. It wasn't because when you become an adult, you produce what you are. You produce how you were raised. You produce, you know what I mean? Your generational curses, your bullshit, so on and so forth. So, yeah, it never was, but it is now. And there's, like I said, guys, nobody's the same person. A lot of you guys might have just heard what she said and said, oh, well, he comes from money and blah, 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 blah. That's the whole point of this podcast, is it doesn't fucking matter, because I know tons of fucking white collar dudes that never stepped a toe, that never got caught stepping a toe out of line, that will fuck you over in a heartbeat. They're the scum of the fucking earth. I worked for one for the last 10 fucking years. I know fucking tons of convicted felons, rehabilitated drug addicts, rehabilitated alcoholics that would fucking literally go to war for you, give you the shirt off their back, give you your last $10. It's disgusting because once somebody sees the pits of hell, they appreciate even the mid ground, but they strive for the high ground.
Yep.
And where you have somebody that's kind of just never hit that rock bottom and never gotten to that point, you know, they've just always sat up here. They're that high and mighty fucking whatever you want to call it.
And those are the first ones that judge.
They're the first ones that judge. And unfortunately, those are the politicians, the lawmakers. Those are the.
Well, let's not put them all in a basket.
Well, and I don't want to get political.
When you have never seen, when you've never seen hard times, it is very hard to judge those that have. But I also believe those are the ones that cover up their own hard times because they don't have the kind of experience to show that. And
you know what? Everybody's got skeletons in their closet, guys. So, that's
we just put ours on display.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, guys. I'm very transparent. I mean, if anybody, everybody's, and I say it on social media all the time, you know, I make these little posts, you know, if anybody's going through some shit and you ever want to just reach out, there's going to be there's a contact form on the website. You guys can get in contact with me. Also, another point of the show, if you guys see this and you want to come on here and just shoot the shit, tell me about your experiences. I'm always open. But no, definitely, if you're seeing this, hearing this, definitely check out the website. I've got tons of links on there. To help guys when they come home, whether it's loans, whether it's housing, whether it's jobs. I've got a full page of resource links that I've already, that's already in the works. So check that out as well. But I'm always here to help you guys if you ever want to slide my DMs. Girls, if you slide my DMs, I'm going to show my wife. So let's just not. I will help you, but she's going to be present.
I will. All right, so I think it's been about an hour, and I didn't do anything on the list you gave me.
But this was good.
Is there anything you want to end with? Like, I think one of the biggest, you know, we did the goal of the show, and that's awesome. But the final thing is, the hope of this is to show people that they don't have to stay in that cycle, and they don't have to go back to the life that led them to prison the first time, the second time, the 15th time. People can change. My dad was an alcoholic. He changed. You came home, you the minute you got convicted and, you know, you dried out, you changed. But change is possible, but you have to want it.
Well, yeah.
You have to want it. And, you know, you have to, sometimes it's cutting the bad people out. You are who you hang out with. You are who you hang out with. And so the final question is, you know, you feel that you have been successful, but what is success? What's your definition of success?
So I fucking love this question. Because anytime somebody, it's funny, I just went, again, we're going to my buddy's wedding, and I'm going to make this real quick. You know, I went to Hammer and Nail. It's a beard place yesterday, and I'm sitting back talking with a guy in the back lounge, and you know,
it was the groom's friend.
It was the groom's friend, and we're just shooting the shit. And he makes a comment. He's like, you know, I'm 37 years old. I don't feel successful. I don't feel this. I feel depressed all the time. I see all these other guys that have money, have cars, have this, and they're a few years younger than me. And I'm like, listen, success isn't measured by what you have in your driveway, the house you live in, the toys you have. Success, I have always measured in, can I go home at the end of the night and lay my head on my pillow and smile, knowing that I am content, I am happy, I am taken care of, and I am doing the next best thing.
I'm doing the best.
I fucking can. Overall, your success should always be what you're doing to better yourself, and you judge yourself on the day before. Did I do better than I did yesterday? Again, I know tons of guys that have tons of toys in the driveway, tons of money in the bank, a huge house, and they are miserable fucking people. I'm not saying all of them are like that. I'm just saying you can't ever put a dollar amount on success. I will take my success with my beat up fucking porch, which we're replacing this summer. Don't judge my fucking porch. But I will take my success every day. My success of I have been to prison. I've made a great life for myself. I have a car that runs in the driveway. I have a beautiful wife, beautiful family that loves me.
I'm way more fun and smart and funny than I am beautiful, but I appreciate what you said.
I have all the intelligence, the sarcasm, and yeah, fun. I'm blinking twice under my glasses. You can't see it. Blinking twice means help. But no, that's my definition of success. I can care less if I have a brand new Beamer in the driveway. I don't fucking fit in a Beamer. What makes you think I would want a Beamer? I have what I need, and I've seen the pits of hell, and I know what being a drug addict feels like. I literally used to pray for death every day. Every time I would put that needle in my arm, I was praying, God, just let this be it. I was always too scared to pull the trigger or purposefully. I just always hoped it would happen on accident. I've seen the pits. And I know how far I've come from them, and that's how you gauge your success. That's how I gauge my success. That's what I encourage all of you to do, is in terms of gauging your success and reaching for the stars or reading rainbow, whatever. But that's my goal in all this. That's what I hope for all of you. And yeah. So I'm just gonna wrap this out. And again, guys, I fucking love this woman. I'm just gonna say it from a standpoint of, could I have done it without her? Yeah, obviously I was doing it without her. Would I be where I am today? I don't fucking know. You know, I really don't. I don't think I would be. She is like I said, she's the driving force behind me, and she motivates me on a day in, day out basis. Mary, I fucking love you. I love you with all my heart. I think you are fantastic. And I do owe a majority, if not most, of my success to you. So
I know.
Guys, I love you. We're out. We're going to my boy Tyrone's wedding. Tyrone will be on here as well, hopefully from the beaches of Bali. That's another fucking sweet story.
I want to go to
this dude, he was another bunkie of mine in county jail. And you know, Tyler went through some shit. He has agreed to come on. He's getting married this afternoon, and they are taking a month-long trip to Bali. So I'm really hoping he'll hit me up while he's on the beach there. We can do the cast from the beach. But overall, guys, fucking love you. We build monsters. Stay the fuck out of trouble. Check us out on the flip side.